And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me, I have one newcomer and one returning brother to the temple. They are part of the multi-headed monster that is Adderstone Games. Previously here on for both Legends of Avallen and its module expansion Against the Fairy Queen. Now back with a Faeseeker's Guide to Avallen. In the blue corner we have Deren Ozturk.
Hello, hello, hello.
And in the red corner we have Samson.
That's right. That's me. Although I thought I was also in the blue corner, but that's fine. I can be in the red corner. I thought we were on.
Yeah, true. We're not across each other.
This isn't World Tag League. How you two doing today or tonight?
Yeah, we're in 3 different time zones right now. I don't know if your listening base will know that.
Yeah,
Deren over in Wales.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And following Mildra's intro, we're obviously all completely plastered right now.
That's right. I drank. Yeah, we drank a little bit. We bought some alcohol at Costco yesterday here in Japan, and we had some pear liqueur with soda water, and it was quite nice. It was quite lovely.
Cool.
I'm not plastered yet.
No.
I'm chugging water, just getting completely wasted on water right now.
Hail hydrate.
Yes.
Hail hydrate. And wait, it's like 8 a.m. It's like pretty early where you are, Mildred. So are you drinking? Because if you are, I'll join you. I don't mind.
As far as you know.
Yes. Yeah, Mildred Monk is always drinking. Yeah.
That's true. It is first coming, as far as we know. And I guess you are a monk, and I would probably align myself more with a bard, and Deren is some kind of wizard, I would say. Wizard?
Yeah, that's appropriate. Yeah, some kind of wizard, and I think that's probably the best description as well, because you don't know what kind of magic I'm using, but it is some kind of magic. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I know.
Now, obviously, since we have one newcomer here, that does require me to go with certain traditions. I did this with you the first time, Deren. I have to do it with Kurt. So one of the traditions with every newcomer is to go into the origin story, the humble beginnings in their journey within the tabletop. So walk me through your introduction to role-playing games and what made it stick.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so I first started playing Dungeons & Dragons, I think I must have been, 8 or 9.
Born rolling dice. He just came out with a fistful of dice in his hand and he was good to go.
Sort of. I was all about like this anime of King Arthur when I was like 3 or 4 years old, and obviously video games and stuff. Before that, actually, because that's the one where the football players become like knights, right?
Yep.
Which I also loved. But there was another old King Arthur anime back in the like mid '80s that I was obsessed with that my parents got on beta. If any of you children know what Betamax is, I had a Betamax and I wore that shit down. Anyway, I was obsessed with fantasy as a young child, obviously. And then for my 8th or 9th birthday, they used to TSR, the precursors of Wizards of the Coast, owners of Dungeons and Dragons, used to have D&D in these little box sets, which was the equivalent of the black box with the red dragon Jeff Easley
You're thinking red box
imagery on it. Yeah. I guess it was called the red box.
There
although
was
I
a
thought
black box, but that was more of an expansion box than the core one you're thinking of.
Yeah, well, it was a self-contained. Either way, I think it was equivalent to the black box, but it was still a self-contained game.
Yeah,
and it was like
expert rules.
Yeah, what would it be called? That it was very basic. It was like characters at the 5th level, and teaching you how to play a role-playing game if you never played it before. Which I did. I didn't know anyone who played role-playing games. I knew I didn't have anyone above me to teach me the rules, so
I have to correct myself. There was the black box that was right around the time of the Rules Cyclopedia. So
yeah, that might have been it. Yeah, and the one I bought was probably the same book and the same rule set, but in a smaller package.
Yeah.
And I read it, and I taught myself how to play the basics of role-playing games, and I taught my brothers and sisters to play role-playing games. And then I started going to conventions. And again, keep in mind that I'm like a 10 or 11-year-old going to these conventions in Los Angeles with a bunch of people who are 20 to 30 years old my senior. And I was really into it.
Yeah.
And I wrote some articles for the old RPG. Do you remember the RPGA?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wrote an article for the RPGA when I was like 13 or 14. So that was my first published Dungeons and Dragons thing. And then TSR died and Wizards of the Coast bought it. And around that time, I stopped playing role-playing games for a while. I was in high school. My family wasn't that well off. I helped with the family business. And I had a long sort of hiatus on role-playing games while I pursued other interests, particularly music, was something I learned and studied in university. Flash forward years later, I moved to Japan, and I'm teaching kids at international schools. And as I'm teaching these kids during the pandemic, 5 and 6-year-olds who don't know how, are learning English, while I'm spending time with them in like after school care and so on, I start busting out miniature role-playing games with them, and I start playing like miniature versions of Dungeons and Dragons with them, and I start rekindling my sort of love for D&D and role-playing games, and I buy No Thank You Evil by Monica Games, and I start introducing that to them. And at the same time, Deren, so I met Deren when I was in Japan, so that's where we met in Japan, and we both played Magic the Gathering for many years together. And he had a role-playing game that I didn't play in when he was here, but I had a guest starring role. Wasn't that right, Deren? Was I a guest or something?
Yeah, at some point you were involved. You also sang a song.
Oh yeah. So it's probably one of those things. Yeah. Oh, anyway, so we kept in touch, and then Deren started making, and we talked, constantly. And when it came through that he started developing Legends of Avallen, I decided to. He invited me to get involved with some writing, since I like writing, and I like literature and English and so on. And yeah, I've been involved ever since. So that's the long and the short of it, I guess.
Yeah, I can certainly get that. Now, obviously, Avallen is something that's no stranger to this temple, and with the Faeseeker's Guide, if the name itself wasn't a dead giveaway, it is more about exploring the more supernatural side of Avallen. And I suppose I should ask this right out of the gate, because of certain mistakes I made in other interviews.
Yeah.
Within the full text, will you have something approaching a pronunciation guide? Since there's gonna be some names that that are going to trip people up.
Oh yeah. No, I think we've got a pretty good track record with our pronunciation guides, and we've been quite lauded for it as well. At the beginning of the book, there will be a guide, a layman's guide to pronouncing Welsh, which is much of where our non-English linguistic ideas are sourced from, the Welsh language.
Yeah.
And then in the text as well, when there are words that are obviously not English, there is also a pronunciation guide next to those words when they're used as well. So you don't have to skip back and forth in the book.
Yeah, I've messed around with Welsh in the past, and I know that for a lot of people for whom English or American English or Australian English is their primary language, there's a few uses of vowels and a few uses of letters that are gonna trip them up. So it's good to have that kind of thing.
Actually, if anyone listening wants a crash course in Welsh right now, I can give you an immediate one that's very fast. The word is business. So the English word business, for a start, how do you normally pronounce use in English? It's like a sound, right? Or
Yep.
In business, it's an I sound. It's like an business, sound. So in Welsh, the U is always an sound, like it is in business in English. And the second thing you need to know is that in business, you have two sets of S's. You have the first S, which has a Z sound, actually. And you have the two S's at the end, which have a S sound, a softer S sound. The first S is made by vibrating your larynx as you speak. You go zzz, you can feel your throat vibrating. That's called a fricative. And the second S's are made by doing the exact same sound without vibrating your larynx. So it comes out softer as a zzz. That's literally a difference between a Z and an S. And in Welsh, they do exactly that. When you have a letter, a consonant that's by itself, it's a soft sound. Sorry, by itself, it's a hard sound, fricative. And then when it's two of them together as a consonant pair, it becomes a soft sound. So, for example, F in Welsh is actually a V sound, a V. But if you put two Fs together, it becomes a softer sound. So it's F. And that's how Welsh works at a glance.
It's pretty good shorthand, Deren. I like it.
Yep. And fortunately, going through the quick start, a lot of times when a new name or a new group is brought up within it, there's usually a slight aside when it comes to pronunciation, and I'm guessing that's going to be carrying through in the full book.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's mostly for Kurt. I write them for Kurt, and then
thank you.
Yeah.
I am notoriously famous for saying words wrong, both in Welsh and my native language. I got endlessly tormented for pronouncing papyrus for many years as papyrus. I'm just bad at it. I think it comes to the territory of like reading and seeing words before hearing them.
And then from my side of things, I go through like the full like cyclical process of grief. Like when I first met Kurt, it was like disbelief. And then it became anger because it's like, well, come on, dude, you've been working on this for like 3 years now. You should know how to say these words. And now I'm in the acceptance phase. And it's like, no, I get it. That's just part of who he is. I love him for it. It's fine. Yep.
Sorry, yeah. I'm just always in acceptance. So that's.
I liken it to trying to catch a ball with your opposite hand.
Sure.
And if you listen in the distance, you can hear my colleague Xanatrix laughing in the distance because he's ambidextrous and I'm not.
Must be nice to be ambidextrous. What's your roommate's name?
He's not my roommate. He's my colleague.
Yeah, well, must be nice being ambidextrous.
Yeah,
or confident with more than one any kind of hand.
I usually end up bringing up the question of which side do you pitch from, referencing an old minor league story of what happened when you had a hitter and a pitcher in baseball who were both ambidextrous, and everyone spent like 3 minutes trying to figure out who's picking what angle, to the point where the umpires had to stop play so they could figure it out, since technically speaking nobody was breaking any rules at the time.
Sure.
Because what are the odds you'd have two people on two different positions who are ambidextrous?
Sure. Although I wonder whether for athletes there's a higher incidence of ambidexterity or not.
Not really.
No, is it okay? So
it's just
some
sports value ambidextrous players more like baseball, but there's no higher percentage.
Okay, I see.
Interesting. Now, one of the first things that I think one of the first things to bring up with a Faeseeker's Guide is the fact that you're expanding kind of the lay of the islands of Avallen.
Yeah, should we introduce like Avallen to people first, because they might not be familiar?
I think we can go into a bit of a skinny as far as the lands that have been covered in the core book and the Fairy Queen, as well as what's being expanded on with the Faeseeker's Guide.
Yeah, for sure. So, Legends of Avallen is our Celtic-inspired role-playing game, and it's a card-based system that it's all on its own. That was designed to emphasize creative teamwork amongst players. I never wanted you to be doing the same thing twice. I wanted everyone to be working together to overcome obstacles using their imagination, and the system rewarding you for it as well. So it is based on our mythical, fantastical land of Avallen, which is inspired by Celtic myths, primarily Welsh myths, but also Irish, Scottish, Manx, Cornish, and Brittonic folklore. Then we had, as you said, Against the Fairy Queen, which is our campaign book, which is a huge 15-part campaign adventure where you work to undo the machinations of the titular Fairy Queen. And now, a Faeseeker's Guide to Avallen, this is our setting guide. So we have a rule book, we have a campaign book, and now we're making a setting guide for Avallen, which to me feels like the trifecta. That's then like everything you could possibly want about Avallen. And in this book, we are delving far deeper into the traditions, religions, legends, stories, and politics of each of our clans in Avallen, as well as providing character origins and character origin abilities for each of the clans. And then from beyond there, we then delve into the fantastical otherworld and detail the 5 gods and the fairy courts that try their best to rule and contain the chaos and often terrors that are formed inside the otherworld. And as players, you can petition these fairy courts for powers and blessings. And to do so, you have to enact that fairy court's will upon the land, defeat their enemies, and give them sacrifices. And in return, the Fae will grant you blessings that give you unique powers that go on top of your subclasses and your classes. But you still have to use those powers in accordance to the fairy court that you've pledged yourself to. And if you do so otherwise, for greed or personal gain, or to save your companions even, you will be somewhat punished, but only in the way that the Fae deem, which is usually some kind of trick that will be placed upon you. And then you'll lose access to your powers for a short amount of time before you overcome the trick. And then again, you can act again. So this is a book that has lots of play options, but it also has lots of GM options as well. We have this huge tiered lore system where every entry in the book will have like multiple tiers of lore, from common, rare to legendary, that allows the GMs to know what kind of information they should be giving out to players depending on who they're talking with or what they have access to. That lets them delve deeper into the world by acting in it. As well as adventure sites, secrets, again, to all these clans and fairy courts, and legendary artifacts, which we're calling something different to magic items. They're not just an image and a stat block. These have like full histories and backgrounds and quests associated with them that you can delve into. And of course, the folkloric monsters as well from Celtic myths and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the whole book. Yeah.
Now, since you brought up clans, and since that is a significant part of the Faeseeker's Guide, this brings me to one particular conundrum that can happen, and that is when you have an adventuring party that has people from multiple clans. And I've asked this question when I was just starting out with like L5R, which obviously had its own faction system. But do you have an aside on how a GM could make the premise of an adventuring party of different clans who normally would have their different agendas work?
Yeah, exactly. So we in the world of Avallen, to be an adventurer is something different or outside of being a clan.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different role in the society, and one that people know means you're not necessarily tied to your clan. So a group of adventurers are expected to act independent of their clan and not necessarily represent it. In fact, in the law, we have a term for them, which is headless. It means you're no longer a part of a family, and your fellow adventurers become your own family.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, if the GM wants to run a campaign just for the Penlevy clan, then you could all be a part of that one clan and go forth as a group of Penlevy and enact their political will upon the world. But generally, our adventuring parties are multi-clan groupings, and not necessarily doing a political agenda of one clan. They'll usually be adventuring for adventure's sake and helping people. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Kurt?
Yeah, it's very simple. It's very different from something like L5R in that sense, where and I agree with you. I was a huge L5R fan when I was growing up, but it always felt like when you played the RPG that if you had a Crane clan and the Scorpion clan in the same group, you'd have to really like do mental gymnastics to justify why they're going together. But I think the clans are all still Valak. They're all still Celtic, our version of Celticness, which are the Valak. And so even though they're from different clans, they're still of the same peoples, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's another way to think about it too, which is even though they're from different clans, they're all still roughly on the same page in terms of their culture and their overall ethos. And then you only really have to sort of work with it a little bit if someone wants to be, say, a Raxian, our stand-in for the Romans. But that's pretty easy to justify too, in coming up with reasons why, someone from the Empire of Ataraxia and the Valak would be adventuring together. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's as hard as some other games with a similar kind of thing for that reason.
Yeah, I could see that. And when it comes to L5R, whenever that question's been brought up, one of the more common answers is treating the player characters as Emerald Magistrates.
Oh right, yeah.
In fact, that's as close to word of God as you could get in that situation. But
sure.
I'm guessing further within the core book you will have a bit of a guide as far as how the clans see each other, not in terms of a mechanics thing, but as potential background. Since even if headless are meant to be independent, there's always going to be old tensions.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 100%. That's definitely going to be a thing of, because as you play, if you decide when you sort of join these clans and use them to build your character background, then yeah, we definitely want to give your character a view on, from their point of view, what the other clans are kind of like and how they might perceive them as a suggestion. And of course, you're always, like any game, you're free to come up with your own ideas, but we definitely want to give a foundation for people to view the world through.
Yeah, actually, we have a stream where we've been designing the book like in its entirety on stream, pretty much. So you can track all of if you're into game design, you can see what we've been getting up to and seeing how a book is made from the ground up. And one of our streams was a lot of fun because we were inventing reasons why clans hate each other. what ancient grievances they have that they bring up at clan meets and things like that. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. So yeah, that's definitely gonna be in the book.
Yeah. Now, since being a Faeseeker is one of the big things that's being added within this book, I suppose one of the things I was curious about is what the difference between say the differences and similarities between say the Everones and their associated fairy courts? Is it a case where a Faeseeker would be more associated with one or the other, or is it kind of a collective, as it were?
That's a really good lore question. I think the way we see it, that the fairy courts serve their god, serve their everyone. They are, I mean, unlike in some other universes, our gods are not omnipotent and omniscient.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't be everywhere all at once. And that is the role that the Fae progeny take, is enacting their will across the regions of the other world and across Avallen.
Mm-hmm.
So they're kind of connected in nature, but yes, you're right, they are not the same thing. The fairy courts have their own infighting. There are also rogue Fae that go against the mother or father, god or goddess. Spoiler alert, look at against
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Yeah.
You ruined it. You ruined
it.
Is that really a spoiler when you're dealing with a court, and thus you're gonna be dealing with court intrigue?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's very much that kind of relationship. The relationship, as you just put, between a court and the king.
Yeah.
There is defiance. There are rebellions. And so to put a point, as a Faeseeker, you might end up finding yourself working against your god unwittingly. Perhaps the Fae that you've formed a pact with turns out to be a rogue Fae, and you didn't know that, and now you have a conundrum. Yeah.
And could that also mean that what qualifies as advancing the patron's agenda in that case could result in contradictory actions? Like one thing that was perfectly acceptable for the court or the everyone that you're working with, the next moment might be something that offends them.
So we're going to give, obviously we'll give guidelines, but those guidelines are at the service of the game master's interpretation of the values of each of the courts. And you're right, the Fae can be capricious, right, and sort of turn on a dime, but at the same time it's also meant to be a mechanic where when the player sort of follows their court, that is somewhat consistent. So it's, again, it's the fallback of it's largely up to the game master either way in the story that they're trying to weave.
Mm-hmm.
But the baseline is that the Fae courts do have a general sense of their expectations. But if all of a sudden it does have a turn, then it should just be in service of the story and the characters that the campaign is trying to introduce. But barring that, it should be hopefully like the game master will have like those guidelines of saying like as long as you work within these general guidelines, you should be able to make use of these powers and serve your court predictably. With I'm sure exceptions as characters and NPCs and otherworldly NPCs come into play.
Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing that the main reason why Faeseekers and why these pacts would be more of a thing is to expand the sphere of influence that a given Fae court or everyone has, to act in places where they can't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see, I told you, Kurt, he's good. He knows what's up.
Do you want to answer this one, Deren, or should I?
No, go ahead. I'm just saying, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good question. Yeah. So like in the lore, in our lore, which we of course try to get inspired by as much, folklore from Welsh folklore, Celtic folklore in general, and wolf folklore, of course. But specifically in Avallen folklore, there is an event called the Sorrows. How do you say it in what's our Valak word for that? Is it Egotifion?
Oh God, dude, I can't remember. You can't put me on the spot like that.
Well,
this is the deep lore stuff.
Yeah, Egodopian, the Sorrows, where basically the everyone discovered that their powers grew based on worship, and that eventually led to fighting because they were basically gods on Earth for centuries or some untold amount of time. So it was kind of a golden age until they realized that they can get more power if they basically slay their godkins, followings, or steal them away, and that led to basically civil war until the Everpact came, and the Everpact basically said that the Everones would go back into the other world, and they would not directly interfere with mortal affairs. But what the Everpact does not cover is the fact that their agents, to a certain extent, still can. So that's kind of the role that the fairy courts take, where they help enact the will of the Everones, the gods, because they themselves cannot directly interact with mortal affairs by their own hand, so to speak.
Yeah, and then to Mildred's point, the Fae themselves prefer generally residing in the other world, and spending extended periods of times in the mortal world isn't exactly what they want to be doing. And so, recruiting mortals to do their handiwork for them is the I can't remember what I'm trying to say, is the way of doing things. However, from the mortal side of things, the title of a Faeseeker isn't necessarily a noble or heroic title. Like to be known as a Faeseeker is to be known as a crazy person. Like, you don't want to get messed up and interfering with Fae and the Fae politics. So the Fae find it actually very difficult to recruit. Yeah.
And the world of Avallen is very much taking its sort of cue from the way people actually did look at the worlds of the fairies, right? Like, up to, I think there's a book called The Celtic Faith, where it had like a first person primary interviews with people from the turn of the 19th and early 1900s, late 1800s, and up till that point, people just believed that fairies were a thing, but they just didn't want to, mess around with them because you'd be insane to. They have their own agendas. They're unpredictable. They exist, but let them do their own thing, And that's kind of how the Valak view the other world and the Fae as well, where they know they exist. They worship the gods that they serve, but they want to spend their whole mortal life just not messing with them if they can help it.
Which is why Faeseeker would be something of a title in that regard, because that kind of person is the right kind of crazy to work with the Fae.
Exactly.
And it tends to be the adventuring sort because it's in their nature.
And
did you? Sorry, go ahead, Mildred.
I'm not saying every Faeseeker is crazy, but just
I am.
That, just pursuing that is going to be enough to get the side eye from people, in the same way that somebody who does who does daredevil like stunts for the heck of it is going to get the side eye asking, "Are you absolutely nuts trying to pull that?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And did you read the quick start guide? We have, so on our Kickstarter campaign, we have a quick start guide, preview PDF. Did you happen to read that, Mildred, or did you look at it?
Yeah, I did multiple times over, because I always attempt to study whatever I'm working with. As Deren can attest, I try to have something I can study in advance.
Appreciate it. Yeah. But yeah, you see in that book too, there's a sort of a framing device that the book's going to have of a Faeseeker who is the student of who he refers to as the greatest Faeseeker of all time, and so he's writing this book now, or at least they'll have excerpts of his voice, sort of telling his fellow aspiring Faeseekers about how to do this, and he's the first one to he's the pioneer Faeseeker sort of writing it down, especially because writing is kind of a more recent convention in the culture, as opposed to because of the influx of the Valak writing. Valak culture did not have writing in the same way that we think of writing systems, but he's trying to codify it using the new technology available from the Raxians and so on, and that's kind of what this book represents. A communication of a lot of secrets and details, both of the Valak clans and of the gods that they serve.
Oh, yeah. Now, since Fairy Tricks was brought up earlier as a means to demonstrate that unpredictability of the Fae, I am a bit curious what prompted the idea of doing it in a full-on tarot deck. I know that you kind of already have the card thing built in with the core rules, since it is using a playing card deck. Was it just a natural choice to use a tarot deck?
Not completely. We had the idea of Fairy Tricks first. I knew because there's a problem of, power creep is fun, right? Mm-hmm. But I didn't want these Faeseeker powers to be a separate subclass. I wanted them to go on top of your class and subclass abilities, and so that is a form of power creep. So I knew I wanted there to be restrictions regarding them, and the restrictions are you have to actually work inside the game world. You actually have to do things that are worthy to gain these powers, and then once you have them, you can only use them in certain circumstances, and then if you do otherwise, then you're subject to these Fairy Tricks. So it's kind of this engaging play pattern where the players get to decide if they want to use them outside of the permit, the purview, and subject themselves to these Fairy Tricks. So we knew we kind of wanted that playful aspect between the players and the GM, where the players get to do these things and then find out what happens to them when they use them in desperate circumstances. And I don't actually remember exactly where the tarot deck idea came from. I know people had been asking us to do a tarot deck for a while, but I hadn't no reason to. Our game works with a deck of normal playing cards. And then I think we just were working on the Fairy Tricks and realized, well, we need a whole lot of them to make it, random and interesting every time. And I honestly don't. Kurt, do you remember where the idea came from? Was it someone on the stream perhaps mentioning it, or you, or me?
I think it might have come from. Okay, and we could go back to the historical record and correct me if I'm wrong, because we did record a lot of stuff, and if we created on stream, maybe I'm wrong. But I have a feeling it came from us working on another game, which was kind of inspired by tarot stuff and interpretive, like storytelling stuff. The board game that we've been working on behind the scenes, which kind of had a tarot-like element, and maybe you suggested or I suggested it in production. Like, oh well, wouldn't it be cool if we used tarot, kind of like what we've been working on, to sort of like do interpretive. But I think the idea was to, maybe we didn't land on tarot yet, but then when we realized that, oh yeah, a tarot deck might make sense because of that's what a tarot deck does, and it's
you're right. Like I think I was going to make it a deck of cards. I think that was going to happen anyway, and then we realized, well, there might as well be a tarot deck, and then looked into it. It's like a tarot deck, 78 cards. That's enough to make it super random. And then we had the idea of, I had the idea of that tarot cards obviously have the associated meanings to them, and it would be fun to play into that, or play into the reverse meanings of them for these Fairy Tricks. So all of the Fairy Tricks will be tied into the meaning of the cards and the artwork that they feature as well. So it's like a holistic game piece. Yeah. And
since you said 78, I'm assuming you're using the whole tarot deck, not just the major arcana.
Yeah. It's a full tarot deck, minor and major arcana. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although at the very least with this, you won't have to worry about whether you're drawing something reversed. And
yeah,
I'm guessing that the effects are going to be on a random chart if somebody does not want to, or does. No,
we're going to force you to buy the cards. If you don't buy the cards, you can't use the book. Now, yeah, it will be in a table in the book as well.
We're going to come to your house and force you to print it out, and I'm going to sit there and cut them with you and put them in sleeves.
Yeah.
What are you, the Pinkertons?
I'm the Tarot Pinkertons, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Mildred.
Yeah. But now with that in mind, I know that in the quick start there was an example of the blessings from the Court of Shadows that had four tiers. What would be the upper limit of tier when it comes to the blessings you would get from the Everones or from the courts within the full book?
So the four tiers are granted by the fairy court themselves. Blessings from a god themselves are not included. Well, it's not. That's something that requires a whole campaign. Again, spoiler against the Fairy Queen. You get some tangles in there with the gods as well. So the blessings, the direct blessings from everyone require a whole campaign onto themselves. So the book is only concerned with blessings that you can gain from the Fae, which are more readily accessible to every adventurer. And there will be 4 tiers for each fairy court. We didn't want to do more than that because we don't want to overwhelm players with abilities on top of the subclasses. And again, there was the concern of fairy creep, power creep. So yeah, each fairy court has 4 tiers of ability. Yeah,
I suppose there would also be a concern of not wanting to make the Faeseeker into what Ralph Koster called an alpha class.
Sure, yeah, exactly that as well. Yeah.
For context, for anyone who isn't familiar with what I mean, cast your mind back to the old Star Wars Galaxies MMO from the early 2000s. Ralph Koster had run that particular project and was resistant to put Jedi in that game until he was forced to during the New Game Experience era. And his reasoning was he felt that it would become an alpha class, in his words, where people would over focus on that. And this is more of a sandbox style MMO where there's a lot of different roles that are meant to be part of how the machine ticks. You know, not just say rebels and Imperials, but things like dancers, things like merchants, things like smugglers, all that kind of stuff. The kind of thing you'd see in like Eve. And if everybody's focused on one particular type of character, it can throw that for a loop. And he wanted to avoid that. And
yeah, that sounds like a game design nightmare, to be honest. Like, obviously the Jedi are extremely powerful entities. Everyone loves them. They're super cool. So if you don't include them in your game for balance reasons, because they are obviously overpowered, then everyone's going to be annoyed at you because why can't I play a Jedi in your Star Wars game? But if you do include them, then everyone's going to play a Jedi, and you have to nerf them somehow or what?
He attempted to contain it by having it that you had to have a force sensitive trait that was randomly assigned to your character at creation, and get certain holocrons that would spawn on certain points of the map. But it didn't take long before people were making spawn point maps.
Yeah.
Which I think he knew that making those obstacles wouldn't last.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I mean, if we look in a lot of fantasy games, there is a similar issue where the caster characters have this this tier above everyone else, almost becoming the system mastery archetype.
Yeah.
So I can understand not wanting to fall into that trap.
Yeah. So the way we tackle that in Avallen for both spellcasting and Faeseeking is that they're both dangerous. And it's a risk-reward proposition. Yeah.
And specifically, like Deren mentioned before, these powers should ideally be used in service to your fairy court. So if you can't really justify that, you run the risk of being inflicted with fairy tricks and these possibly major, hopefully minor, but sometimes major hindrances to you. So I guess it's the narrative choice to use it outside of choosing when to do it is important. You can't just spam the power in every situation, otherwise that will sort of have you tisk by the fairy court.
Yeah, you'll lose your legs and you'll lose your mind if you do that.
Yeah, so that's insanity. Yeah, so fairy-induced insanity is how we control that. That's our equivalent, I guess. But it can also be a little bit of fun. It's fun to be a little bit crazy, and so that could be enjoyable as well.
Enjoy fairy tricks in moderation.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Nobody should be eating fairy dust unsupervised.
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't say that. I'm saying, you want to have a good time sometimes. You're from Minnesota, you get it.
Yeah, I know. I know. Just be careful about where you do it, and make sure to have somebody to carry your dumb ass home.
Yeah, exactly.
So with that in mind, some one of the other things that was brought up in both the quick start and in the at a glance on the Kickstarter is the idea of tiered lore, which is already somewhat present in Avallen, but it's since this is something that is unique to this game, I think it's worth going into as far as the benefits of that kind of lore system.
Yeah, I honestly I can't. I mean, you've probably actually experienced more systems than I have, Mildred. Someone else must have done something like this before, right?
There's been attempts here and there.
Yeah.
I think one of the major ones I can think of is the way system and setting topics were handled in Weapons of the Gods and Legends of the Wulin. But both of those games, as much as I enjoy them, their flow is a bit messy. I'll put it that way.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, so our tiered lore system is we want to empower a game master to easily create the world for their players and create adventures and interesting just intrigue in general. So all of the clans, fairy courts, gods, locations, legendary artifacts, and folkloric monsters will all have this tiered lore system in place where there is 3 tiers of lore: common, rare, and legendary. And each tier is accessible to the players through different means, and it's very codified for the GM. So the common lore is available to anyone who's local to the source of the lore in question, as well as outsiders that are experts. So if you have a player who is from the Penlevy clan, they already know all of the common lore about their clan because they're from there, right? And if anyone in the group is not from the Penlevy, well, as soon as they get into the Penlevy clan area, any general common lore about the Penlevy clan, they'll gain access to just by simply talking to people. Unless for some reason those people despise them, they'll be happily give this information. It's just common lore, right? And that immediately gives the GM, the agency, and the players the reward of saying, oh, I'm a Penlevy clan member. What do I know about this? And the GM knows exactly what they know about this because it's the common lore, right? Then the rare lore is codified as someone who is a local expert or someone who's an outsider that is a hyper specialist. So now you have player characters. If you're a player character and you're a druid as well, so you're a Penlevy druid, well, now you'll know also all the rare lore to do with Penlevy druids, right? Just by circumstance of being that kind of character, you will know this stuff. And if you are a Penlevy but you're not a druid, well, then you'll have to go speak to a Penlevy druid to find out this stuff, right? So once again, it just super codifies of if you're a player of this kind of character, then you already know this stuff. The player should feel empowered. Oh, I know this stuff because these are my choices. This is my character. This is what I should know. And if there aren't any player characters like that, well, then the GM knows exactly who it is they should be speaking to get this kind of information if they want it. And rare lore is also rare, which means that to get the information, the source they go to has to be somewhat favorable to the players, which means they might have to do something for them or put some effort in to find a rare scrawling on a cave wall or a rare artifact that has this information contained in it of some kind. And then legendary lore is the information that experts wish they knew. So no player character will ever have access to this information just from being a player character. Experts don't have access to the information either. This is lore that you have to sometimes work your ass off to gain access to. And these are the super deep secrets. These are the hidden twists, hidden lies, the stories, the story behind the story. And these kind of bits of lore snippets will enable adventures as well. So once the players take an effort to find out this piece of legendary lore, it should then open up other avenues for adventures in the future. Perhaps they found a secret between a political leader like a Brennan or a king, and that allows them to have some kind of leverage against them or something to investigate or that kind of thing. Or it gives you a secret about a magic item. that lets you use it a different way, or opens up a quest and how to enhance the item, or to what was the example in the quick start guide is to free an imprisoned spirit, for example. So the legendary lore is something that requires often a quest or something epic to get access to, and then it itself should then inspire other quests and other things. And so we're really excited about it, because as a game master myself, I just imagine it being really a fun system to use, and something that's really inspiring for the adventures that you get to make inside the world. So in a way, I'm making what I would want to see in a book, and thinking that other GMs would appreciate it as well.
Yeah, I can get that. And given that, I know that there's plans to put in a bit of scenario help, but I'm curious if within that you guys plan on putting the possibility of like red herrings when it comes to the different tiers of lore.
So I think there's going to be red herrings or misinformation at the common level for sure across a lot of these. So it'll be hard for player characters to know what might be true or not. But I think the intent of the legendary lore is that is giving the game master the real deal of what's happening. So there's definitely going to be things that game masters can play around with, and players will interact with and find surprises when they learn about things. I think in the quick start guide that there's like small what do you call it? No, I guess we don't have a red herring there. It is kind of just a legendary artifact where this is a thing that makes you lie, but they don't know the depth of the fucking fairy, hiding the skull away and all that stuff.
Check out the quick start guide to know what we're talking about. But like fundamentally, 100%. Like if when it comes to the political relations, that the common law might be that these two people are best friends, best buddies, they go way back, right? And then you'll find out the legendary law is that they secretly hate each other. They're divided over this one thing, and they're plotting each other's downfall, right? I'm not sure if that counts as a red herring, but it's obvious like a complete discrepancy between the common law and the legendary law. That will happen quite frequently,
We did have a thing with the wedding, didn't we? Like I think the red herring in the skull lore is that it was believed that it was lost at a crazy Penlevy wedding, right?
Party,
but and the real lore is that it was taken by the queen after the abused queen after her dead father murdered her husband. So
it was a massacre.
So we have a little bit of that there. So you're definitely going to see more of that stuff where appropriate, right? Like I can imagine sometimes it'll be like, that kind of aligns with what we heard, and other times it'll be, oh shit, this is totally different from what we heard. And the other thing too is this really gives the game master a way, because I think Deren and I sort of appreciate this kind of I don't know if this fully encapsulates it, but it is a bit of less is more, because you see a lot of books and campaigns like where it's like we have 100 new magic items, 200 new magic items, which is cool, but I think both he and I really like deep things, right? And we want to say, well, a magical item is way cooler if it has like a whole story and background, and when you delve into it, it's really you feel like it's a part of the world, and when you interact with it, you learn more about the world through interacting with these locations and monsters, magical items, and that's really the intent of the system, to bring elements of the folklore and the history that we like, and to sort of reveal it in pieces to the players and to the game masters in really fulfilling ways and play patterns.
Yeah, we don't want to fit 20 magic items across 2 pages. We want to fit 1 magic item across 2 pages.
A page, a magic. That's the goal, right? It's like a page.
No, I think it's 2 pages. I think.
Is it 2 pages? Okay, well there.
Yeah. The quick start guide is 2 pages.
Oh, that's fair. So you get these big old fleshed out stories, and that's what matters. That's how we remember things from the past. We got these big old long stories about these cool happenings and magical items and creatures and weirdos and giants going across the ocean to to murder their brother-in-laws. It's cool. It's wild stuff, and we want to bring that to your gaming table.
Mm-hmm. I can certainly get that. Now, with that in mind, what are you guys shooting for as far as the total page count?
I made this mistake with Against the Fairy Queen. I think my shooting total there was 250 to 300, and then we ended up with 350. And so this time, I mean, publicly we're saying 250. Privately, I'm saying 200. And between me and you, I know that means it will be 250 in the end, because everything always goes over. So our internal limit is 200 pages, but it will end up being 250 pages. That's how it works.
Yeah. That certainly tracks. And this is the reason why whenever I ask page count, it's always a ballpark kind of thing, because I'm well cognizant of the fact that nothing ever goes to plan.
Yeah.
We've all heard the whole line about the first casualty is the battle plan.
Yeah.
Especially I think in this particular case, it's not like there's going to be a bunch of pages added if you guys hit a bunch of stretch goals.
No, there will be some. We do have some stretch goals that will increase the page count, I think.
Yeah, but it's not going to be one of those situations where there's like 50 or so pages that end up getting added just because of stretch goals.
Yeah, no.
Which I can appreciate that restraint. I contrast that with say some campaigns where it feels like there are more stretch goals than there are actual things to pledge for initially. Yeah. And you end up getting updates for that particular project years later because they have to add in all that extra stuff that was in those stretch goals.
Yeah, exactly. All our stretch goals are planned ahead of time, and we know the content that they'll include and what it means for the project. Yeah.
Yeah. What I'm saying is it's very easy to get eyes bigger than your stomach.
Yes.
Yeah.
But with that in mind, what would you guys be shooting for as far as a release window? At the very least for the PDF. I know that printing and shipping is its own particular brand of pain.
Yeah. So if all goes well, then we're aiming for next summer for the PDF. And hoping that the books will be in people's hands by autumn, winter at the latest. Yeah.
So you either have the choice between messing around with Summer Fae or Winter Fae.
Yeah.
Neither court is ideal, but there's no such thing as ideal when it comes to messing about with Fae.
Yeah, exactly. You got it.
Both of them will find new and interesting ways to try and screw you over.
Yeah, fun.
But I will certainly look forward to it. But with that said, I do want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way to my temple and enjoy the madness that happens around here. And
of course, it's always a pleasure.
Yep, anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open. As I often say around here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Odo.
Yep, and of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there'll be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers Monk, stay fucking frosty, everybody.
all the time.